and welcome to my video for IVF, or at least what I hope to be a helpful video for the IVF process. As I record this actually, it's 5 years ago that I was last going through IVF for what turned out to be my youngest son. About 6 months prior to that, I experienced a failed round of IVF, and I was very lucky actually because that was the only failed round that I actually experienced during my journey with IVF. About 3 years, I think it was 3.5 years prior to then, I'd gone through my first rounds of IVF, so that would have been about 8 years ago now actually, and that one was successful actually. So I found, as difficult as the failed round of IVF was, I found it really helpful in many respects because it gave me an opportunity to have a comparison then between a successful round of IVF and a failed round of IVF. And what I noticed, what I was aware of, was that I was completely not in the right headspace when I experienced the failed round. You know, I was going through the motions. I felt a pressure actually because I just turned 40 and thought that we really should be using what we had left in storage. But actually, I wasn't ready for it. My life was really out of balance. I was really stressed. I was really depleted. And there was some resistance to the process as well. And if there's one thing I've learned actually during my time with IVF is that if you have any resistance to any part of the process, then it's less likely to work. I always remember a nurse saying it's like a roll of the dice, IVF. And in many respects, she's right. But I do believe that the more that we can be involved in the process and accepting of it and do everything we can to support it, the more our chances of success then might be. Okay, so I'm aware actually, I've had a student recently even that was really having a hard time coming to terms with taking the drugs and was saying to me, but how is it that you took them? Because ordinarily I wouldn't like to take any pharmaceutical drugs, but at the end of the day I really wanted to have children, and that was the only option available to me really, if I wanted to have my own children anyway, was to take these drugs. Someone had shown me a way, and so I accepted it and I surrendered to it, and that made a huge difference. I didn't spend any time reading through all the leaflets that you get with the various drugs, reading up on the side effects or what might happen in the future. I wasn't interested in that. I just saw it as a process, something I needed to do to get from here to where I wanted to be. And that I think made a huge difference as well. And the other thing actually that a friend had shared with me who had already gone through IVF was not to buy into self-pity. And I think that also was really key for me, was this idea of not buying into self-pity. And any time I noticed that I was going down that route of self-pity, I kind of caught myself and just inquired into it. Was that really helpful? Was that going to help me? It's the same with the resistance. Is it going to help you? You really need to ask yourself what it is that's going to help you. And anyway, the long and short of it is, I can't guarantee this is going to help you, of course, because everyone's different, but it's possible that it helps in some little way. So, shall we come down to lie on our backs on our mats, okay? So just bringing yourself down onto your back, on your mat, and maybe just starting with the knees bent and the feet flat to the mat. Okay, so if that's not comfortable for you, if any of this isn't comfortable for you, then you must adjust for your bodies. What works for my body might not work for yours, so please don't cause yourself any problems. But we'll start with the knees bent if we can, the feet flat to the mat. And I want you just to really feel into your feet. So close the eyes and just feel the feet on the earth. Okay, so it's really important that we have our feet on the earth when we're attempting IVF. During my failed round, I absolutely didn't have my feet on the earth. And actually, strangely, we happened to be in Glastonbury a few days prior to embryo transfer, and I had a Reiki session with a lady that also said I really needed to get back onto the earth. And she was right, I wasn't on the earth. So here are your feet on the earth, and just really feel the earth between, or the earth beneath then I should say, your feet. So sensation of feet on the earth. And then notice more of your ankle joints and your shins and your knee joints all the way up through your thigh bones. And thigh bones, of course, contacting pelvis. There's your pelvis. And the pelvis is very important, isn't it? Because it's the home of our reproductive organs and our womb space, our womb. So just really having a feel into your pelvis. How does it feel? And don't worry if you can't feel it, if you haven't really got a clue what I'm talking about, that's fine. But just, you know, if nothing else, you can probably feel that the back of your pelvis is on the mat. There's a sensation there. And you might notice that you're leaning towards the right more than towards the left. You might notice actually that it feels really congested in the pelvis, or maybe it feels really spacious. Maybe you've got a pretty poor relationship with your pelvis because it's not doing what you want it to do. So we notice all these things, and we come into it rather than turning away from it. We're cultivating friendliness. This is an area of the body where we might grow a baby, the baby that we dream about and that we're desperate to bring into our lives. So this is a space for loving attention to rest itself as often as possible. And if you have any trauma in this area of the body, if you've experienced loss already in this area of the body, then maybe that's more challenging for you than it might be for someone that hasn't experienced that. So there's a sense of being friendly to self as well. It's okay. Whatever we're feeling is okay. And then we notice our rib cage. Okay, so just notice your rib cage, and here in your rib cage, of course, your lungs and your heart. And maybe your heart's feeling a little sad at the moment. Maybe it's been challenged by the complications that you might be experiencing that might be preventing you from living your dream. And we notice the space between the pelvis and between the rib cage. Maybe there's some gripping in there, some tightness, some anxiety often, some frustration as well. Because fertility or having fertility issues can be extremely frustrating. And we can feel as if we have absolutely no control, and we can feel completely disempowered by the process of conception. And this can create feelings of depression and overwhelm and anxiety. So we just acknowledge that. And then we'll notice our shoulders. So the shoulders can bear the weight of the responsibility of the effort, of the pressure. So we notice them and we let them rest, be held by the earth. And the arms, the hands. And I've rested my hands almost automatically actually on my pelvis. And maybe you take your hands there for a moment and just notice that feeling of the hands resting on the pelvis. And if any of you happen to be Reiki attuned, of course, then brilliant, you've got the opportunity to give yourself Reiki at any available opportunity, and I would wholeheartedly encourage you to do that, to encourage your self-healing. And then notice your neck and just let the neck be soft. And the head can carry so much tension during this whole experience. And the neck too, actually, it's a seat of vulnerability. So we acknowledge our vulnerability. Of course we feel vulnerable. We feel all sorts of things actually, not only the frustration and the sadness, but the anger as well. There can be huge amounts of anger. And of course, with anger, sometimes you find the self-pity. But we know that that's not helpful. It's not helpful to our sense of self and to our empowerment, actually. We have to take back that power somehow. So let's breathe, shall we? Let's breathe to the womb space initially. So as you breathe in through the nose, feel as if you're not only taking air from the nose into your lungs, but as you're taking that, or as if then, that you're taking that all the way down to the womb space. So breath coming in through the nose if you can. It's going through the windpipe into your lungs, but working, or at least connecting then with your diaphragm, that dome-shaped muscle between your rib cage and your abdominal cavity. And just feeling that you're taking the breath down to your womb space on the inhalation. And then on the exhalation, just letting that space soften. So trying not to grip, not to use the tummy muscles as such, but to work with this dome-shaped muscle between the rib cage and the abdominal cavity that moves downwards in space on the inhalation. So as if you're taking that down towards your womb space. And then giving that whole space not only more kind of life force, energy, but also giving it a really good massage in the process. And then just let go of that after your next exhalation. And then let's just breathe to the heart now, shall we? So maybe your hands go onto your chest cavity now. And as you breathe in, there's a sense of expanding into the rib cage, as if you're suspending the heart in air almost, prana, life force. So we start to create a little bit more space between each of the ribs. Bringing more air into the lungs, but feeling as if you're expanding, creating more space around the heart, freeing more of your heart then. You almost feel like you need a strong heart to withstand the experience of IVF, courage, cultivating greater courage. So that we can be less restricted then, less bound down by fear. There's a lot of fear that comes with IVF. And then let's let go of that on the next exhalation. And then can we link the two spaces? So maybe take a hand down to your womb space, below your navel center, and a hand on your chest. And can you breathe heart energy down to womb space? And on the exhalation, can you take womb space energy up to heart? So can we sort of deepen the connection between the two? I think that's really important. So we inhale into heart, and then take heart energy down towards womb space. And then we exhale, release womb space energy all the way back up to the heart. And that might be enough for you just to focus on that alone. But if you've the capacity to visualize a light between the two, then doing that as well if you can, so that as you breathe in, the light moves or flows with the breath from heart space down to womb space, and exhale, the light comes up from womb space back to heart space. That's it, and it can be any kind of light, any colour, whatever appeals to you. I might suggest we don't take black, take something that's brighter, lighter than black, okay?
one more round. And then just let go of the breath and let your hands settle wherever you want to settle them. And just noticing how you're feeling. So maybe there was some resistance to that practice. So maybe the mind you noticed is just really hectic and you really struggle to stay present to the breathing. So that's interesting, right? Noticing our state of mind. Because it's my experience that our state of mind is so important, it's fundamental to the IVF process. And we need to cultivate as much as we can a steadiness of mind, like a strength of mind, so that we can be even more focused than we already were on the process. And we can be less thrown off balance by what other people may say to us, so we can be kind of stronger within ourselves. So don't give yourself a hard time if your mind is all over the place. It's perfectly understandable. But let's just see if we can stay with the practice, actually. Let the practice help us in some way, mentally and physically. But, you know, we have to remember that we're not just the body and we're not just the mind. We're a combination of the two, and we're also the soul. So it's really important that we allow for that as well if we can. And we notice our resistance to that. So we've got the feet, we found more of the breath, we started to notice more of how we're feeling. And now we might bring the arms down beside the body if we haven't already, and let's just find more of our hands. So there are our beautiful tender hands which will one day hold our baby. So we find those hands and we know it's a possibility. Someone's told us that IVF might be a possibility for us. And we trust them, and we trust in IVF that it might be the way that we can live our dream of having our own baby one day. So these hands that might hold our baby, these hands are resting on the earth, and we notice any resistance we have to that idea that we might one day have our dream. So where's that resistance coming from? Do we not believe in our dreams? Do we not believe in ourselves? Do we not believe in IVF? We have to notice, we have to start like weeding out that resistance. Like, it can be so subtle that we don't even know it's there until someone points it out to us, until we're triggered. So pay attention to your resistance. So the hands, the feet have got the earth, the feet trust the earth, the hands are these tender hands, the arms have the earth. And we might see if we can allow a little bit more of the rounding of the lower back away from the mat, so we keep the fullness of the pelvis, but we take the pubic bones forward in space a little bit, as if we're trying to bring our pelvis a little bit up the mat to our head. So we really need to notice more of our pelvis. This is going to be the home for our baby for a considerable length of time, really. So really notice that. We want to make this space as welcoming as possible for new life to grow. You know, a little bit like if you were preparing the soil to grow a flower or grow a plant. You want to make it as inviting, as nourishing as possible for the plant to grow, for the flower to grow. And so it's the same with us. Just create that same environment. So there's a sense of space in there and softness. We're not rigid, we're not holding. And let's see if we can keep that place of softness as we take a breath in and up the buttocks go. And the buttocks aren't gripping. The pelvis is still spacious and we've still got our spine. And the hands have got the earth, the hands are tenderly placed on the earth. And the feet have got us, the feet are really connected to the earth. We are held by the earth, okay? The earth has us and we have to trust in that. We have to trust in something. And the breath still coming in and out through your nose. There's a softness in your tummy. You don't need to force the tummy up. You don't need to grip the tummy. There is a way, okay? It might not be the way that you wanted, but there is always a way. Okay, and then we'll take a breath in here and a breath out, and we release the sacrum back down to the earth. Nice and gently, remember, softness, fullness of pelvis. Lovely. And then let's just encourage, inhale, knees to chest. And if you want to just take a little massage on your back here, just exploring your lower back. Here it is. Okay. And then should we just see, how are the legs for us today? How are our roots? So, I mean, one at a time if you want to, or together as I'm doing. Find the feet again, not in a rigid way. The feet are like curious to feel the air. They feel the air towards, above them, up towards the ceiling. So they take a breath in, or you take a breath in. It sort of feels like the feet are breathing though. And up the legs go. And the knees, we keep the spaciousness of the knees, and we don't distort the pelvis. We're not trying to stretch the thigh bones out. The thigh bones provide stability, don't they? They connect to the pelvis, they provide stability, and one day we're going to really need this when we're cultivating, growing our babies. So there we are, feet in the air, breathing. And if at any time you feel to yawn or sigh, then let that happen. That's coming from a much deeper place, a real letting go. And you know, really the IVF process for me anyway was a huge process of letting go of how I thought it should be, which was not having to use IVF. You know, letting go of the idea that I might have and in many respects it was the conscious conception that I dreamt about, just not in the way I dreamt about. So I had to let go of those dreams, you know, and I had to let go of how it would look as well. There were lots of things that had to be let go of. So taking a breath in here, and as you breathe out, the feet coming back down to the earth, just nice and gently again. So thinking of your pelvis, held, spacious, nourished. And then let's come up off our backs now. So maybe you roll to the right side or to the left side, whichever way, and bring yourself up from here. And then all we're going to do really is just take some hip circles. So if you can sit cross-legged, do. If cross-legged is really uncomfortable for you, be honest with yourself, don't force it. You could maybe sit with your legs out and have your knees bent. You can also sit up on something. I'm afraid I haven't got anything to sit up on to demonstrate, but put a cushion under your buttocks. And then let's take some hip circles. So maybe we go from left all the way to right. So you're kind of going in a clockwise direction, inhaling, and then right around to left, exhaling. And I might encourage you to close your eyes and just really drop into this movement. And just have a sense of the womb space as a sacred lake. So this area of the body, it's Swastisthana, it's the sacral chakra energy centre, the 7 main energy centres in the body. We've got the root, and then this one, the sacral chakra. And it's represented by the element of water. And this area of the body thrives on water. You know, you need to have, the body is primarily water, right? And we really need to think about, you know, the plumpness, the watery nature, like the juiciness then, maybe that's the word I'm looking for. The juiciness of your eggs, actually, as much as anything else. Okay, because that's initially what we're trying to do, isn't it? Create really strong, that's maybe not the right word, that's a word that comes to mind initially. I think of it as maybe juicy, like fertile. We just want to think of something that's alive, you know, ripe. Ripe is the word I'm looking for. We want really ripe eggs. So water, let's bring water, a sense of water into the body. So this area, sacred lake, and you are circumnavigating that sacred lake with reverence for this area of your body, okay, which is growing potentially, and maybe not, who knows. We all go through different processes, don't we, with IVF, but potentially trying to cultivate really ripe eggs. And then those of you that have those taken, you know, we have the eggs removed, and then very quickly you need to cultivate a really welcoming womb for the embryos or the blastocysts to embed in, you know, settle into. It needs to be a place that you'd want
you know, to settle into if you put yourself in the position of the embryo. We don't want it too hot, so it gets burnt, right? We don't want it too sticky, so it can't grow so easily, it can't develop. We want to really just bring that idea, not only then of the watery quality, but that welcoming, soft quality. Okay, let's change the direction. So let's take a breath in from right to left, left to right, exhaling. So we're inhaling right to left around, and exhaling left to right. So we do what we can outside of our yoga practice as well, you know. I mean, I'm a Reiki teacher actually, so I turned to Reiki. I gave myself lots of Reiki. I went and received Reiki, I received reflexology. I mean, I'm an Ayurvedic a consultant of sorts as well, and I wasn't then though, but I did turn to Ayurveda too, to really sort of nurture myself, my overall well-being, and make sure that the womb space was a welcoming space. But you'll find your own way. You don't have to obviously adopt the same practices or approaches that I did. We're all different, and what works for one person might not work for another, and I think we need to be really discerning during the IVF process, because there's lots of people trying to, unfortunately, sell us stuff, tell us that that's the way, and really there's only our way. Okay, so shall we just come back to the starting position, and eyes closed if they're not already, and just feel into the body, but especially into the womb space. And then I think there's just one more practice, one more sequence that might help us today. So let's just bring ourselves from there. Let's just cross the ankles actually the opposite direction. Sorry, before we do anything else, there's two things then. Sorry. Okay, so the first one is, let's just take a twist actually. I feel like a twist. And also just so that we can settle with the legs in the less natural cross. So let's notice the pelvis, the fullness of the pelvis. Notice the fullness of your chest cavity. You know, twist through your center. So not forcing, just flowing, floating with it. Almost like imagine your chest, because this area is the heart chakra and it's represented by the element of air, which is probably funnily enough really, right, given that we breathe air into the lungs in this place. But it's almost like this area is a floating balloon then. Okay, it's like a balloon floating, and you're just turning from your center, so the pelvis is down here and that's full and spacious, and then the chest is also, it's airy and spacious, and you turn the chest towards the right. Oh, and you breathe here, you breathe in and you breathe out, the hands follow, so the hands can support you. Maybe you take your left hand to your right leg somewhere, but try not to pull. Breathe to your center. It's your power center here, navel center. And we can be completely, I said earlier, disempowered by the IVF process. So let's breathe to that center. Let's let go of that self-pity. It's not great, no, but you know, it is what it is, and I think we have to remember that. It is what it is. Okay, let's take a breath in, and as you breathe out, let's release from there, and then let's float the chest around towards now the left. Let's take a breath in, breathe out, so that's it. There's a certain fluidity, a certain lightness of heart. It's all okay. You're okay. Remember that as well. There's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with any of us. It is what it is. Okay, let's take a breath in. And as you breathe out, let's release from there. Okay, now we'll come onto hands and knees. So maybe take a blanket underneath your knees, or not, as the case may be. And let's just start, let's just take a couple of hip circles. So let's just take a couple of hip circles if you can. Just noticing how that feels. Sometimes it can feel really awkward. We don't like this. It feels mechanical. So find more fluidity. See if you can just go with the flow a little bit more. Notice any feelings of discomfort, and I don't mean just physical discomfort, but emotional, mental discomfort. Go the other way. Maybe your relationship actually with your pelvis is one of disdain and disappointment. So we let that go as well, remember. Cultivating friendliness to self, and then let's come back to the starting position once we've done that. Okay, and then let's see, so maybe wrist joints underneath the shoulder joints perhaps. Fingers can be apart, but not aggressively. Remember, these are tender hands. The tender hands that you might hold, used to hold the most precious thing in the world, so not only your heart, but new life. Okay, and then from there, let's just explore. So we'll take a breath in. We'll start to explore the head coming up a little bit and the tailbone coming up a little bit, softness. And then on the exhalation, without pressing through the back of the heart, we just explore the back of the heart. The chin comes in towards the chest, the tailbone goes down a little bit. Okay, so there's a broadening through the back of the pelvis. Inhaling, we do the opposite of that. So we notice more of our tummy, the softness through the tummy. We notice more of the dipping in the back, the shoulder blades coming in, and then we breathe out, doing the opposite. So just stay with your breath, consciously slowing the breath. So the inhale has a sense of the tailbone almost coming up a little bit as the head, the top of the spine comes up, shoulder blades settle in towards one another. And on the exhalation, we notice tailbone coming down, noticing the back of the heart, chin towards the chest. Okay, 2 more. So it's really important that in our yoga practice, we practice in a way that reduces any stress that we might be experiencing, that calms our body down. So if you're someone that, likes being really active, then that's great and that has a place, but let's see if we can just allow a little bit more resting into ourselves. See if we can, cultivate more friendliness, calmer state of mind. And then we'll come back to the starting position. Now let's just find a balance between lifting the tailbone. So if we lift the tailbone, I'm doing that now, I don't know if you can see, and then we do the opposite of tucking the tailbone under. And you can do that, just feel the difference. I mean, we've just been exploring that anyway, really, but let's find a balance between the two. And then try not to let your pelvis be too heavy here. So remember, spacious pelvis, spacious, loving pelvis. And we're going to slowly bring our spacious, loving pelvis down in space as we bend more into the knees. The hands will need to come back. Spacious, loving pelvis, not dropping down, not dead, very alive actually. Okay, and then the whole of your heart, so the whole of your heart space, also coming down if you can. Now if anyone finds this really uncomfortable for your knees, then it can be helpful to take a bolster or a pillow in the space between your heels and your pelvis, but otherwise you might just lie on your tummy. And those of you who are in pose of a child with me, Balasana, maybe you rest one hand on top of the other hand. And the forehead can possibly rest on your hands or make fists. And just let the shoulder blades be free.
Okay, so try and almost wrinkle the skin on your back. Try not to let the pelvis drop down heavy. There's a lightness in it. Still a deep connection of the heart space and the womb space. So soften the navel center. Notice your breath. And you find a little bit more space through your back body with the breath. Okay, and then take a breath in, and the hands can find the earth. Again, try to keep the pelvis relatively light as the head comes up. And then I would suggest that you now come down to lie on your backs. And depending on the time available to you, you either just take a few minutes if that's all you've got available to you, or if you've got a little bit longer, I would highly suggest listening to a yoga nidra now. Okay, so any of the yoga nidras, just to encourage greater resting into self. Otherwise I'm going to leave you for now, and I'll see you tomorrow, maybe. I'll be here anyway. Okay, well done. Rest into it. Namaste. Thank you.